Hi, welcome to lesson number 20, and this lesson is in relation to CAPA, which is corrective and preventive action, which we would have touched on in previous lessons. So the objective of this lesson is to cover the following points. At the end of it, you should have a good understanding of what a CAPA is, corrective and preventive actions, along with the regulations around CAPA control. We'll talk about the CAPA flow diagram. I've listed some FDA citations around inappropriate or ineffective CAPAs. They're easily accessible on the FDA website, and I'll show you where I've pulled down that information from. Some important considerations around CAPAs, and we'll summarise, and again I'll give you some references or some links to additional reading. So to start, the best thing would be to go through some definitions, and the first one is to talk about something that's non-conforming, and non-conforming is non-fulfillment of a specified requirement. So something isn't doing what it's supposed to do. Non-conforming material report, or an NCMR, is a report that serves as primary documentation of non-conformance and the actions associated with it. A corrective action then is an action to eliminate the cause of a detected nonconformity or other undesirable potential situation, and a corrective action normally takes place after the fact, or once the deviation or the nonconformance is found. You take corrective action. Correction is an action to eliminate a detected nonconformity and can be made in conjunction with the corrective action above. So once the action is once the deformity or the nonconformity is found, your action is taken, but that normally is taken before the fact. Preventive action then is actions taken to eliminate the cause of a potential nonconformance or other undesirable situation. Preventive action is taken to prevent occurrence of a nonconformance. So some of the regulations around CAPAs, or corrective and preventive actions. It is a primary focus of during FDA inspections and FDA audits. The purpose of these regulations is to have problems come to the attention of appropriate personnel, normally management in the area, in a way that brings about a permanent solution. So it's never considered, CAPA is never considered a quick fix. It's always a permanent solution to prevent recurrence of the issue. Success of CAPA depends upon the planning that goes into it. So some of the regulations or the criteria are listed below. Again, the last slide has links to these requirements. Please take some time out to read through and familiarise yourself with them, because there are some important points that needs to be considered in those additional reading materials. So there are 4 points to consider when correcting a problem, and the first one is the root cause determination. So a thorough understanding of the entire situation is essential to get to the root cause of the problem. Without a root cause determination, then you're only guessing what the problem is, and the problem will more than likely repeat itself. Number 2 is to determine the scope of the problem. So this problem may be indicative of issues that go beyond just the initial difficulty and could be causing problems throughout several systems or several areas. So you need to look at the scope, how wide the situation actually is. The third one then is to prevent recurrence. So look at which system has failed, and a thorough systematic examination will bring issues to light and aid in recurrence of prevention. So the fourth one then is to prevent recurrence at corporate level. So larger corporations can support expertise and technology can gain support and expertise from various locations, and this applies to knowledge gained from internal quality audits and regulatory inspections. So it's important to remember that FDA believes that one site is part of the entire company, and if an observation is noted at 2 separate locations, it's still considered to be a repeat observation of the same issue. So sharing of information is very important at corporate level. This CAPA flow diagram gives a visual of how you carry out your change, corrective and preventative action. The first thing that you do when you're working through a CAPA is to identify the issue, or identify the problem. To enable an efficient root cause to be investigated, the problem has to be clearly defined up front. You collect all available information that's possible. You ask the questions like who, when, what, why, how, and the most obvious questions, and you summarize the problem in a detailed, concise description of the issue. So some of the things that could be considered to be a non-conformance would be a deviation, an out of specification or an out of trend, incorrect yield, equipment failure, return of product, customer complaint, incoming inspection of a material. So they would all instigate your CAPA because you have an instant issue there up front. The next thing that you do is you look at your impact or your risk assessment. And when you're doing that, you assess the impact or the magnitude of the problem. So you take a look at the problem and you decide how big the scope is, and how far the problem actually extends. So some of the common tools that you'd use for risk assessment or risk management would be failure mode analysis, FMEAs we spoke about before, fault tree analysis, FTAs, hazard analysis, HAZOPs. Really, risk analysis allows you to determine the priorities and assign resources, adequate resources, to determine the impact or the severity of the risk. So FDA does expect that the degree of corrective and preventive action taken to eliminate a potential non-conformity must be appropriate to the magnitude of the problem. So FDA does expect that we develop procedures to assess the risk and how to correct and prevent the problem from reoccurring. So that's quite an important step in the CAPA flow, is to determine the impact of the risk and to give the risk an assignable level as such. The next thing you do is you carry out an immediate action. So an immediate action is necessary when the quality is compromised by the problem, or the efficacy or safety is compromised by the problem. So an example of an absolute immediate corrective action would be to recall your product, or stop the release of a product from the site, rejection of a batch, interruption or holding a batch until the problem is resolved, so holding a batch in production. For immediate corrective actions becomes very important in sterile environments where time is of the essence. If you're manufacturing in a sterile environment and you discover a non-conformity in your final sample, you need to do a concurrent investigation in production as well as in the analytical lab. The root cause investigation then is a systematic approach to ensure that no root cause is lost through focusing only on a few assumed root causes. So really what that means is you need to use, say, a brainstorming tool, a fishbone diagram, cause and effect diagram, to see what effect this non-conformance has on other areas, and you must use a systematic approach for that. So some of those quality systems like the fishbone diagram are a good way of figuring out the actual investigation. So you need to list, during those systematic approaches, you need to list all potential root causes and evaluate their likelihood, whether they're likely, possible, unlikely, remote, etc. And if more than one root cause is likely, then a simulation of the potential root cause may help to prove the actual root cause. But finding the primary root cause is essential to determine the appropriate corrective or preventative action. So conclusions and quality decisions. So you summarize the identified root cause, you summarize the impact and the risk for the customer or the company. You need to document your quality decision, so there either is no impact on the product quality, so the product can be released, either the product can be rejected due to major impact, or the product can be recalled. And you need to instigate an action plan, and your action plan is based on the results of the root cause analysis. All tasks required to correct the problem and prevent a recurrence are identified and included in an action plan. And this plan needs to be assigned responsibilities or personnel to carry out the action plan and due dates for implementation. Enough detail must be included regarding the required action and the expected outcomes. And it's not listed here, but during FDA audits or any audits, regulatory audits, the focus would not only be on the action plan, but the implementation and the follow-up. So it would always be checked to make sure that your action plan has been executed and that all tasks have been completed to prevent recurrence, that all actions taken were documented, and the appropriateness and effectiveness of the actions are evaluated. So have all recommended changes been completed and verified? Have all objectives been met? Has training been performed to ensure that the affected employees understand the changes that have been made? And was an assessment made that the actions taken have not had an adverse effect on other properties or aspects of a product or a process? And you can close your CAPA or your corrective and preventative action only after successful implementation has been considered and closed out. So this slide just talks through one particular example of an FDA citation where the FDA audited a company and weren't happy with their dealings or handling of their CAPAs on site. And more than 50% of the warning letters in the 483s issued by the FDA and listed on the website are for CAPA violations. So this link brings us into the 483 warning letters on the FDA website. Again, I might have shown you this before, but you can just go into any particular year and take a look at any particular violation. The information is public and it's there for your pleasure to read as and when you can. So there is a link in the supplementary material for this, but just to pull out the information from that, the wording within that citation letter said the following. In addition, our investigator found that you do not determine and implement corrective and preventative actions in a timely manner to prevent recurrence of manufacturing deviations. For example, the inspection noted that some CAPAs remained open for approximately 500 to 700 days without implementation of corrections. Your firm's response stated that you have now completed these CAPAs. However, you failed to address why you had not completed these CAPAs in a timely manner to prevent repetition of manufacturing problems. So close out of your actions is very, very important as part of your CAPAs. So some of the important considerations that you need to bear in mind during inspections is that FDA will expect them to review your actions that you had taken and be prepared to discuss and stand over those actions. So be prepared to talk about the appropriateness of the action taken. Was it effective? Did it correct the problem? Verifying or validating the corrective and preventative action to ensure that such action is effective. So did the solution work? Did it create any other potential non-conformances? Consider reviewing the effectiveness of the corrective and preventative action by reviewing data to determine if similar quality problems exist after implementation. Implement and record changes in methods and procedures needed to correct and prevent identified quality problems. You need to tie CAPA implementation to document control for products and processes. You need to tie CAPA into change control. You need to ensure that control documents are reviewed and approved if changes are made and that the resulting training is carried out. I do expect FDA to verify implementation of changes by viewing the actual processes, the actual SOP changes, looking at the actual pieces of equipment to see whether any changes made to the hardware, and they will want to look at all activities that were documented along with the results of those activities. So documentation and paper trail is hugely important here. So CAPA, or corrective and preventative action, it's considered a pulse check for FDA on how well a firm's quality system is operating. Obviously, a strong CAPA system is indicative of a very strong quality system. The feedback loop between CAPA complaints and non-conforming products is essential. CAPA is all about identifying and resolving problems that can or have resulted in non-conforming product. And CAPA is much more than just corrective actions and preventative actions. Any opportunity to improve on quality in the organization is also considered CAPA. So some of the references here, again, they're quite interesting. If you go into this one, again, it brings us back to the ICH Q7, and there is a section on CAPA there. I can't see it at the moment. There is a section there, 2.4, 21 CFR. This is another one actually which is worth going into, the Utrex Volume 4 Pharmaceutical Quality Systems. That document has a lot of information in it, so again, take your time in reading through that one. And this is just a little video that I pulled down from YouTube, and it explains corrective and preventative actions, but it also explains the importance of looking outside the problem, looking at the process and seeing does it have a knock-on effect on other systems, and how you implement that change effectively to ensure that your CAPA is correct. So it might be nice just to have a look at that when you can. And that's the last slide. Thank you very much.